this afternoon or this morning if you're on the West Coast for the second of a series of 3 beginning indexing training sessions. I'm Carrie Beth Lau. I'm the team coordinator for the Christian Periodical Index. I want to introduce our other team members who are here. We have Jamie Wilkes, who is our reviews editor. Sarah Wessel is our managing editor. Lori Thornton is our speaker today, and she is our retrospective indexing coordinator. Unfortunately, her camera is not working today, so we'll get to hear her but not see her. And we also have some team members who aren't able to be with us this afternoon. Doug Butler is our articles editor. Laura Ladwig is our secretary proofreader. And Jewel Kind may be with us in a little later. She is our indexer training coordinator. And again, this is the second of a series of 3 beginning indexing sessions, training sessions. Last week, we had our first session on indexing reviews. If you were not able to join us for that session, we do have a recording available now, and I think Sarah's going to put a link to the recording in the chat. It's also on the CPI LibGuide, and I think Lori's going to give a link for that in just a few minutes. We are going to have a drawing for an Amazon gift card at the end of the 3rd session, and you get 1 entry for each live session that you join. So we'll have that next week, that drawing. Also, if you want CEU credit for this, after this 3rd session, we will have an evaluation form available, and if you will fill that out and return it by, I believe the date is March 1st, you can get CEU credit for these sessions. I think that's all I need to let you know right now, and I'm going to turn it over to Lori to talk about indexing of articles.
Okay, let me share my screen. I just have to make sure I'm choosing the right one. And we are going to talk about indexing articles for Christian Periodical Index. Again, we're going to be using the Journal of Grace Theology. And if you will make sure that you use that same link that we used last week. Let me throw that into the chat if I can, or if someone else wants to throw that in. I've kind of lost all my sidebars, so if someone else can throw that in, that would be great. Now, if you scroll down, we're using the fall 2018 issue, so select that one. And then go to page 39. This is the article we're going to start with today. Okay, I want just real quickly to mention to you that when you work on Christian Periodical Index, you're generally going to be working with a text editor that is on your computer. There are links to the form on the Christian Periodical Indexer's LibGuide that you can use and then copy into one of these editors. If you are using Windows, you're probably going to be using Notepad. If you want something a little more powerful, Notepad++ does a really good job, and the last time I checked, it was free. If you're using a Mac, You're probably going to be using TextEdit, which comes on the Mac, but there is another editor, Cot Editor, that is open source that's a little more powerful if you want to use that one. So please feel free to jot down whatever you think you need. Some people who used to use WordPad, but that has been discontinued. So we recommend that if you've been using WordPad, that you switch to Notepad. The Indexer's LibGuide is right here. This is the URL, acl.libguides.com/indexers. I do want to point out that over here on the left side, there are some resources for indexers. There's a link to an indexing submission form, which most of us are going to be using the text templates probably instead of that form. It gives you a little bit more control and a little bit easier to use. You don't have to type everything every time when you are using the templates. And you've got the CPI Indexers manual here that is very handy to use, and I'm going to be referring to it quite often today. You're also going to notice that there are links here in the subject headings to free-floating subdivisions, to the Library of Congress authorities, and this is authorities.loc.gov, and to the alternate interface, which is id.loc.gov. And we're going to talk a little bit about those as well. So you've got some links to some of those things right there on the Indexer's LibGuide. And I just wanted to point that out. This is what the text editor looks like. I've got it in Notepad++ instead of just Notepad. But you can see that what I have done with that form is I have actually, because everything that I'm working on in this issue is coming from Journal of Grace Theology. It's all volume 5. It's all issue 2. It's all fall in 2018. I've got all that filled out. I've also put the first part of the URL down here because the only thing that is different at the end of these URLs is the opening page number of it. So, you know, the article that we're working with right now is on page 39. So I just have to add 39 right at the end of this. Now you can still do the copy and paste if you want to, but a lot of times when we're working with articles, we don't have it quite like it is with the flip book. Sometimes we're just dealing with a PDF or with a DOI or something, and the DOI is on the page, but it's not where you can copy and paste it necessarily. By the way, if you are doing a DOI, start with the 10 dot number and not with the HTTP. And what I do is I just copy and paste that for as many times as I need. So, you know, if there are 7 articles, I'm going to copy and paste that 6 more times to give me a total of 7. I sometimes go in and copy it a couple of extra just in case, and then erase them at the end. So one thing I want to mention is that when you are submitting these, you want the reviews in a separate file from the articles. Do not mix them. So make sure you're doing that. When you are copying, make sure you're catching both angle brackets. I have someone who quite regularly omits the first angle bracket in that journal article, and I have to add it in. So be sure to do that. That's the indicator that this is a new record. So this is what the template, of course, looks like. Let's go down. The first element on that is media design. If you look at Appendix F on page 30, you're going to see a list of media qualifiers, and these are mainly for creative works. So if you happen to have a journal that includes a poem in it, then you want to add the word poem to media qualifiers. This particular issue did not have any of these. I have occasionally seen a worship magazine that may have a new chorus in there, so that might be a score that you might be dealing with. We do have a couple of literary type things that occasionally have a short story in them. And I have seen Christian education things that have a play in them. So you may actually need some of these particular qualifiers for your work. Now let's look at the author field, and this is the first one that we're going to really do some work on. You're on page 39 of the article. You want to use the author's name as it appears in the article, but you are going to do it where the last name, last name, comma, first name type format. You do not need to check Library of Congress authorities like you did when you did reviews. A lot of the articles that are written by people who haven't published a book, and so they're not on LC's radar. So we just decided to just make it easy for you and not force you to have to look them up. If you are dealing with a situation where the person has a compound name, and that would be like sometimes Hispanic people, they use the mother's name and the father's name. You may want to check and make sure that it is like Hernandez, Rhea, comma, Ernesto. So you want to check those types of things. If you have things that are German, Dutch, things like that, the Vans and the Vons and stuff like that, if they're American, they tend to come at the first of the name. If they're Afrikaans, they tend to come at the first of the name. If they're really Dutch or German, sometimes they are not in the surname field. They're more in the regular part of that entry. So if you look at page 11, you will actually see the data input instructions. So I want you to if we can put the link up to the form, I want someone to enter the name for the author that begins on page 39. Now, do I need to stop the share so that you can see that?
Or you
Jamie, huh?
You could also just pop over yourself.
Okay. I am on it. Is it not showing? Then I need to let me just pop over to that and share screen again. That's the really weird. Okay, Jamie's got his up now, right? Okay.
Yes, I do.
All right, so Jamie's got it up and we have that particular form. So Jamie, if you will stop sharing your screen, I will put mine back up. And again, let me get to the right page because it lost it, but we did end up right there at that particular page. The title field is the next one. We're going to use sentence punctuation in the title field. So we're going to capitalize the first word, and the only other words that we're going to capitalize are the ones that are always capitalized, such as proper names. A lot of times when you're working with things, the word Bible is capitalized, but the word biblical is usually not with Library of Congress. So things like that. You do not capitalize the first word of a subtitle unless it's one of those proper names. You're going to do a space, colon, space right before the subtitle, just like you did with those reviews. And pages 11 to 13 give you those data input instructions for the articles, for the titles. Let's do this. And I'm going to pop over real quickly to this field. And I'm going to, well, share screen, and I'm going to choose this one. So someone put in the title of this article. Okay, Anonymous Rabbit, you need to move it down to the title field. And don't forget that we're using sentence punctuation or capitalization. Okay. So now I'm going to come back over here. And I'm going to share screen again. And you can see that we actually have the, it keeps moving, the church discipline and neglected formative resource for shaping disciples. So we actually have that particular thing here. One of the things I want to mention, if this article happens to be in a series, you're going to put a period right after disciples, a space, and then in parentheses, you're going to put the name of the series. So if this were in something called leadership resources, I'd do a period after disciples, a space, open parentheses, leadership capitalized, resources lowercase, and close my parentheses. So that's just something that none of these articles in this issue are in a series, but I wanted to mention. The next field is the ILL field, and I'm going to just ask you to, someone can enter it into the form, but I'm not going to share the screen on it. Under the ILL form, we use these abbreviations that are in Appendix A on page 21. Now, there are some of these that are not used in LC, such as table or chart, but we have approved those for use in CPI. But you can use these. So let's just go down this list. Is there a bibliography or bibliographical references is what I should say. So we're going to include BIBL in that. Are there any of these others? Is there a chart? No. I did not see any illustrations. I did not see a map. I did not see music. I did not see a portrait, and I did not see a table. So the only thing in the ILL field will be the BIBL. So these others were pre-filled by when we did the template. The pagination, we're going to use the manual on page 14 to add the correct pagination to that. That is going to be 39 to 55, and we use the complete numbers. So now we're really ready to tackle the subject headings, and that's what we're going to spend the most time with. We're going to want to add some general subject headings on this one, and we're also going to be adding some relating to the Bible verses that are described. So before we get into it, I want to just kind of talk about subjects in general. Our manual says that you can add up to 10 subjects. A lot of that is because of the templates that were online or in Library Master, and that's what they allowed. We sometimes have people that do a few more than 10. So with the text form, and I usually leave them in there unless they need to be combined or something. We use 2 hyphens attached to the 2 words on either end with no spaces between them. If you look at the manual on page 15, you will see that. So you're just basically using the lowercase of the key next to the 0 on your keyboard. You do not use diacritics such as umlauts, accents, tildes, and etc. That's on page 15 of the manual. You're not going to put a period at the end of a subject heading, which you would do if you were actually cataloging on OCLC. And else, we're generally using Library of Congress subject headings, and their links are on the LibGuide or on page 5 of the manual. We do have a list of a few additional subjects that are in CPI, and I have somehow grabbed the wrong version of this because my current version actually has the page number, but it's in an appendix at the back of the CPI manual. Using Library of Congress subject headings, we have 2 versions here. We have authorities.loc.gov and id.loc.gov. And I'm going to show you both of those in the presentation, and we'll take a look at it and see. There's a question if the PowerPoints will be shared. The presentation will be shared. I don't know. Sarah can answer the other question later. She says, yes, we can do that. So we're going to look at these. I want us to understand something about these authority records when we first look at these. There are some authorized access points, and those are the 1XX fields in the computer. If it's in a 1XX field, it can be used in this type of situation. If it's a 100, it's a personal name, so it's someone's name. If it's a 110, it is a corporate name. If it's 111, it's a conference or meeting. So you can think about the Southern Baptist Convention sometimes meets in the summer. And so the conference or meeting name is going to be that 111. 130 is a title or a series, and I'm going to show you an example of one of those in a moment. 150 is a general subject, and a lot of times that's what you are looking for. 151 is a geographical name, and so it's going to be a place name. So just kind of understand that if you get a 130 field, you can't use it for the 150 field unless you're talking about that title or series. And that's something that some people will make a mistake on. So we're going to take a look at some of these. Here is an example. Let's look at World Christianity. This is in Library of Congress Authorities. I see that it's an authorized heading and I'm really excited. I can use this. My article is talking about world Christianity. Of course, this article we're doing right now does not talk about that, but this is just so you kind of see examples. I look at I click on it and it gives me this. So I click on it again and here's what it gives me. World Christianity is a 130. What can I use this? You can type in yes or no into the chat. Can I use this as a general subject heading? Is anyone going to type? Okay, exactly. Julie said no, unless you are talking about the title, you cannot use it. So, and Sarah said you could type it in and let the editor fix it, and you can do that, and we will fix it. Let's take another look. This is one that we had last year in the training, and it was gender role was something that someone came up with. And when I look at this, I see that there's Library of Congress annotated children's catalog and Library of Congress subject headings, and there's even Sears List and Homosaurus. I am only concerned with Library of Congress subject headings. If it's a medical subject heading, a mesh heading, I don't want to use it. If it's a Sears List heading, I don't want to use it. If it's a children's one, that's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at Library of Congress subject headings, and it says references. I'm going to click on that. And when I click on it, it gives me an authority record. And it also says see sex role. The authority record is just going to direct you to the other thing. But if you look at the sex role, outside it, you're going to see that there is an authorized, a references, and a notes. If I look at sex role and click on it, I get down and I see that there's an authority record and that there is a scope note. Both of these may help me in different ways. If I look at the authority record, sex role is a 150 heading. It's a general heading, so I can use that. But if I look at the scope note, it tells me here are entered works on the role or behavior learned by a person as appropriate to masculinity or femininity as determined by prevailing cultural norms. Works on a person's internal sense of being male, female, some combination of male and female, or neither male nor female, are entered under gender identity. So that may help me determine whether I need to use sex role or if the term I need is gender identity. So that scope note is helpful. So I have something for you to look up. I want you to look up theological education in Library of Congress subject headings and tell me what subject headings might we use for theological education. And if you want to unmute and talk, you can. Religious education is one that we can use. Theology, study, and teaching is another one we can use. So you can see that we have some things like that that are going, yes, religious education, not the way she spelled it with extra T up earlier. So we certainly see that we can see those cross references that direct us to correct headings in a lot of places. I want to talk just a second about geographical headings. And that's because some people get a little confused when they're working with subjects. You're going to use the 151 subject headings in direct order form when the place itself is the primary subject. The example I have down below is Knoxville in the 10 there, religion, because that is the place itself is the primary thing. When it's used as a subdivision or subheading, you're going to use indirect order. So it's Baptist, Tennessee, Knoxville. So you break it out that way. You will never use that 151 as that subdivision for the main thing. So that's just a quick word on geographical headings that hopefully helps you. With subdivisions, you will often find information on the correct use in the scope notes that go with it. I find that the idloc.gov interface is a little bit easier to use for most non-catalogers, especially when you are working with the subdivisions. So if you go to id.loc.gov, you're going to see several things here. Here is Library of Congress subject headings. Down here is the name authority of file itself, but you also see some other things in there. But right now we're going to click on the Library of Congress subject headings here. Yes, and Carrie Beth is telling you that the field 781 will show you how to format the subdivision. But so we're going to look at this. We're going to look up theology, and I'm really concerned with it as a subdivision. So I'm going to click on that, and this theology is the main subject heading, theology. This one is the general subdivision. It will actually tell you right there. So I'm going to click on that one. That's the subdivision. And I've blown up here so you can see the general note a little bit better. It says use as a topical subdivision under names of individual religions and monastic orders and under uniform titles of sacred works. So the question I have, can I use the subdivision theology under the authorized version of a person's name like Paul, the Apostle Saint, or Luther, Martin, 1483 to 1546? Can I use the subdivision theology under a person? Type in yes or no. Very good. Y'all got it. What I can do for the Apostle Paul is I can do Bible epistles of Paul -- theology and use that way. Under the other person, under Martin Luther, you're usually just going to use just Martin, Luther, Martin, and his dates there, 1483 to 1546. But I have seen people that have used teachings, and teachings does go under persons, so you can kind of use that. idloc.gov is easier to use to determine if something may be subdivided geographically. And I just want to show you real quickly. This is the main heading for theology. So if we look at the theology, over here is the ID version, and you can see if you scroll down the page, you get to collection memberships, and it tells you you may subdivide geographically. If you are using this at authorities.loc.gov, the way that you determine this is here with the I that is in that position on the 008 field. You're not, many of you are not catalogers. You're not going to know that. So this is the ID interface is going to be a lot easier for you. And I think Carrie Beth has answered a question about using doctrines instead of theology. You cannot use that either because the doctrines cannot be used as a subheading either for individuals. Let's talk about the Bible headings. We prefer that you add a subdivision with the heading. For example, criticism, interpretation, etc., study and teaching, criticism, comma textual, meditations, feminist criticism, hermeneutics, whatever. You can certainly use that. There are some examples here of some correct formats. Now, you notice we have Bible, we have a period in the space, we have Corinthians, comma, first, comma, and the chapter is Roman numerals. And then we have a comma, and then we have the verses in the chapter. And then we do the two hyphens and put our subdivision in. Here with Psalms, even though you're only talking about one Psalm, you put Psalms plural because that's the name of the Bible book. So Bible, Psalms 139, and study and teaching. Again, I told you could use Bible, epistles of Paul, theology. So sometimes there's a grouped thing like that where you can put things together. So there is some guidance in the manual, and I did update this, and it did not somehow show up on the version I clicked on here. So I've grabbed the wrong version to click on, but that's okay. We're going to brainstorm some subject headings for the article that begins on page 39. Now I'm going to stop the share briefly. And I'm going to go out here to the authorities file and share from there. Okay. So what is something that you might want to use for this? Please unmute yourself and suggest something.
Lori, church discipline seems like an obvious heading.
Okay, let's look up church discipline. And I came up, church discipline. There's authorized reference and notes. I click on it. My authority record there has church discipline. It's a 150, so it's a general subject heading. You can also use discipline as a subdivision under names of religions, religious denominations, etc. Going back out here to church discipline, I saw that there was a scope note, and it's basically just giving me that same subdivision information there. So church discipline looks like a good one. So let's add that to our form. What's another one?
I have a question, and I saw it when you brought up the church discipline heading.
Uh-huh.
I think discipline could be problematic depending on what it means, what the article's about. Because when you showed us Catholic Church dash discipline, that doesn't necessarily mean censuring.
Right.
That's what the context here.
Right. Right. It can be very different. And you have to kind of know those nuances if you're dealing with those other religions. But yes. What are some other subjects potentially for this article? If we looked at the article there that was on page 39, it's showing church discipline and neglected formative resource for shaping disciples. Now, there is a heading for discipling, but I kind of think it's really talking about something other than discipling. As we are looking at that, I kind of thought it was more of a situation where it was dealing with the
With spiritual formation.
yeah, spiritual formation. And I'm distracted because I've got this thing across the top that is giving me fits here because it's not letting me click to the place I want to. I'm sorry. So I will try again here and get back over there to it. Spiritual formation is what it's really talking more about. So if I click on that and look at spiritual formation, it has cross references to Christian education and discipling Christianity. But if I look at the authority record, I see the spiritual formation there. And there are some other things here. The scope note is going to be, here are entered works on the development of spiritual disciplines and spiritual growth, works on the process of teaching and training for growth in Christian discipleship are entered under discipling Christianity. And I think that it deals more with the spiritual formation aspect than the discipling in this particular article. So that's one that we might use as well. Let's talk just a little bit about these Bible verse headings that we had. So if we're looking at the ones here in 39, what's going to be our heading maybe for the verses here in Exodus? If someone would type in a subject heading that shows that Exodus one. Exodus 34, 5-7. Okay, someone put church discipline in. Let's add spiritual formation. What's going to be the one there for Exodus? Okay, someone has put the one for the Matthew 18 there. And I'm going to actually just copy and paste from Carrie Beth's here. Suggestion there, because that's kind of what I had there. What's the one for Exodus? I'm not. Okay. Yes. Okay. You can put in those verses. I've got a couple of things there. You do not have to use the one that you actually see in LC. If you know it's because your grouping of verses may not necessarily be in there. You're just kind of following the format here with the Bible is the first word, the book, the chapter, the verses, and then your subdivision. So we're going to go on. I'm just going to let you let's go to the next ones. Yes, as Carrie Beth said, LC authorities will help you up to the book level, but they like First John is not John, comma first. It's epistle of John, comma first. So you will have to look at those little nuances as you look at those particular things. I'm going to go back to my presentation because I don't want to get too tied up here. And trying to get to the exact spot I need to be here so that when I share my screen, I am there. So we're going to just kind of use that particular thing. And I have kind of entered those particular things. Now, there may be some other subjects that fit here. I think Carrie Beth said expository preaching might actually work in was it this one, Carrie Beth, that you said it would work in?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a description of the author's research
Right.
study on his series of expository sermons.
Right. So you might want to do that because it was part of that sermon series. So there are other things that you can do. Different people may do different things. I was trying to keep mine within 10 headings, partly so it would not get so long. You see that I did put the 39 down there as the page that it would go directly to as I was looking at that particular thing. Yes, you can get more specific, the church discipline, because it is pretty much drawing from the Bible verses. You could do biblical teaching as a subdivision there. Okay, so we're forming a heading with an author and a subdivision or work. I want to show you this one before we leave today so that we can practice with the second article and we can all do this together. So let's look at this one. We're going to form a heading with an author and subdivision or work. If the author's authorized heading has an open date, you want to use space, period, space before typing in the work. If you're doing a subdivision, you're going to do a space, double hyphen, and no space before the subdivision. So you see the example here, D.A. Carson. It's 1946 and it's open. There's a space, period, space before the praying with Paul. And then when I'm doing this, if this article was about D.A. Carson's family that we were doing, there's a space there. And then we have the double hyphen. So there we have that particular example. Here are some other examples of living and deceased authors with just various types of headings. Martin Luther, for example, his influence. Again, that should be a dash dash. It converted, whoops. It converted itself because this is Microsoft. Augustine of Hippo Saint, it uses the Latin form for his work. But then we have English, and we actually have here a specific translator that they're talking about. Here is John Calvin, and that's a bibliography of his works. Wayne Grudem, his book, Making Sense of the Future. He's just in there without dates. John Steinbeck, his work, The Grapes of Wrath, there's a period of space and then the thing, and criticism and interpretation, you know, something that's talking critically about his works. So let's look at the article beginning on page 19. And I want you to take one of those forms and fill out the top information. Right now, the author and the title, illustrations, the page numbers, all of that stuff. I'm giving you a chance to do that quickly. Okay. Has everyone had time to kind of get that information in? What are some subject headings that we might use with this particular article? We have a person that it seems to be about. Would someone like to look that up and type it in? You all are really quiet today.
I was writing notes from the last thing you said, so I'm just now doing it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought y'all might be there.
Since the title has an ampersand, it's okay to put it in as an ampersand, right?
you will notice that they generally, even when you are working with books, if the ampersand is what is shown on the title page, that's what they're going to use, even if the word is spelled out on the cover. They may have it traced both ways, but yes. So that is Quentin Schulze's authorized form. There is a heading that I actually purposefully used on the slide right before this, where we were talking about, that may help you, and I'm going to just go back previous, that might help you with a subheading for that, because it is talking about his influence in Christianity. So you might want to do a space and then the two hyphens and the influence. Yes, like that. What are some other headings that we can use? What are some other topics? Just someone throw out some keywords out there.
Thought interpersonal communication.
Okay. So did you look up and see if interpersonal communication is authorized?
Yeah, it has a 150.
Okay, it is. One of the things that you can sometimes do, if it's specifically talking about the religious aspects of that particular term, you can add the subdivision religious aspects. I usually, if it's speaking broadly like Jewish and Christian, I leave it at religious aspects, or even Jewish, Christian, and Islam, I leave it at religious aspects. But a lot of times ours are just dealing with Christianity. So I do the religious aspects and Christianity with a double subdivision there. And Carrie Beth has typed that into the note. She's also put in Christian scholars. That describes Quentin Schultz. He's a Christian scholar. There are some other aspects maybe of communication that are in there. He does a lot of work with media, so you might use that particular term. Public speaking is in there. So there are lots and lots of things in there. Someone else got another term that should go in there that's from that article. Well, these are some of the ones that I put in. There is also a communication and technology that was actually, it was a 150 heading. And so I did that. But there was something toward the end that was talking about love. And I added that particular thing in as well. So just some ideas. This is very much an art instead of a science. So what Jamie puts down or what Carrie Beth puts down may be completely different than what I do, and we may all have some of the same things in common, but we might have some vague differences. It doesn't matter. As long as you are communicating what is in that article and using authorized headings, either the CPI headings that have been approved or the ones that are in LC, we're in good shape. And the editors are going to help make sure that those headings are authorized. That's what we're here for. And you can see I did put in the correct starting page there with the 19. So I have a challenge for you before next week. One of the upcoming articles, I just forgot to add the BIBL to this particular one. When I typed it up, I forgot to add it. to answer Teresa's question. I just forgot to add it to the screen. I'll try to update that. The challenge for next week. One of the upcoming articles talks about the grace movement. I want you to look, the article begins on page 67. I want you to see if before next week you can find the authorized heading for this. Yes, Jill said, how is this article going to help someone doing research? So, but if you can try to see if you can come up with the subject heading for grace movement, one of the groups is going to get this article, but I wanted everyone to get the experience of trying to find the heading because it's not one that's real straightforward. So we will have that next week. I'm going to hit stop share. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, we're right up at time.
Yes.
So if you need to leave, please feel free to leave, but we can hang around a little bit and answer questions if you have any.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Lori, and
Yeah.
we'll look forward to seeing all of you next week when we'll do some hands-on practice and breakout groups. So be sure, if you haven't already, to read or skim the rest of the articles in this issue and be ready to work in groups next week to get them indexed.